as a toddler 25 years ago has been found. Andrea Michelle Reyes was 23 months old when she was reported missing in 1999 in New Haven, Connecticut, but thanks partially
October 2000, New Haven, Connecticut. A father returns home after work. He sets down his keys. He calls out for his daughter. Silence. Not a cry, not a laugh, not a single sound from the toddler's room. The crib is empty, the toys untouched. The only thing missing is her. Her name is Andrea Michelle Reyes, just 23 months old, not even 2, and without warning, she's gone. The police rush to the scene. There's no sign of forced entry, no blood, no struggle, just one name whispered again and again. Her mother took her. Her mother, Rosa, she's gone. Andrea was supposed to be safe. The court had granted her father full custody. Her mother, Rosa Tenorio, had a history of instability, and under court order, was not allowed to take Andrea out of state. But now she's disappeared, with the child, gone without a trace. The days turn into weeks. A warrant is issued for custodial interference, and the FBI joins the search. It's believed Rosa fled to Mexico, possibly to Puebla, where she had distant family. But there's a problem. Mexico does not easily extradite for parental kidnapping, and worse, once they're across the border, they disappear into silence. No leads, no sightings, no updates, just a missing child, and a father crushed by the unthinkable. Carlos Reyes Covertia, Andrea's dad, begins his own search. He prints flyers, he contacts private investigators. He even travels to Mexico, spending thousands of dollars of his own money chasing shadows. For 25 years, he doesn't stop. I never stopped believing she was alive, he once said. I just didn't know where to find her. But for Andrea Michelle Reyes, the story is just beginning. Because what happens when the kidnapped child grows up? What if she's not just missing, but living a completely different life? Imagine growing up and never knowing that your entire life was built on a lie, that your name wasn't yours, that your birthday came with no candles, no photos, no one from your real family, that the woman you called Mama was the reason you vanished. This is what happened to Andrea Michelle Reyes, but in Puebla, Mexico, she didn't know she was Andrea. She grew up under a completely different identity. To the people in her neighborhood, she was just another child, shy, quiet, but ordinary. She spoke Spanish fluently, went to school, helped her mother with groceries, but behind closed doors, things weren't what they seemed. Her mother, Rosa Tenorio, was secretive, strict. She rarely allowed Andrea to socialize, especially with outsiders. No visitors at home, no sleepovers, no stories about where they came from. Andrea asked once, "Why don't we have any baby pictures?" Rosa didn't answer. There were no photos, no family albums, no memories before Mexico. Every part of Andrea's early childhood had been erased. "We moved a lot," Rosa would say. "You were born in Mexico." But it wasn't true. Andrea was born in the United States. She was stolen when she was barely walking. And yet, the life Rosa gave her wasn't always cruel. She enrolled her in school, she fed her, she raised her, believing perhaps in some twisted way, she was protecting Andrea from something worse. But protection and possession are not the same thing. Andrea didn't know that, while she was learning to ride a bike in Puebla, her real father, Carlos, was filing reports, chasing names, pleading for help. She didn't know her real family still celebrated her birthday every year. A cake, a chair left empty, her name whispered over candles she would never see. In her 20s, Andrea began to feel the cracks. She had questions about her identity, about why she looked nothing like anyone around her, about why there were no records of her early years. When she applied for university, her documents were inconsistent. She couldn't find her birth certificate. Rosa's answers were vague, always changing, always nervous. Still, Andrea carried on. She got a job, fell in love, lived a life that felt real, but always slightly out of sync, as though she were living someone else's rhythm. And she had no idea that far away, in a small apartment in Connecticut, her father had just submitted his DNA to a new genealogy database. It was 2024, and after 25 years of silence, the code inside their blood was about to scream the truth louder than words ever could. Every so often, a case that once faded into silence suddenly roars back to life. And this time, it didn't start with a tip. It didn't begin with a phone call. It started with saliva. In New Haven, Connecticut, a detective named Keelan Nivikoff had just joined the Special Victims Unit. Young, relentless, and painfully aware of how many children never return home, she dove into cold cases. One case stuck with her, Andrea Michelle Reyes, missing since 1999. The more she read, the more obsessed she became. A baby stolen by her mother. A case abandoned by boarders. No arrest, no trace, no justice. This child didn't just vanish. Nivikoff told her supervisor, she was taken. There's still a trail. She requested the case file. Old flyers, court records, a father's decades of grief. Inside, she found something crucial. A DNA sample submitted years ago by Andrea's father, Carlos Reyes Covertier. It had never matched anything. But in 2024, something had changed. A private genetics company, Othram, had begun a program called Project 525. Its mission? To reopen hundreds of unsolved child abduction cases using forensic genealogy. Nivikoff sent in the DNA. No expectations, just hope. Weeks passed. Then an alert. Potential match found. Puebla, Mexico. A woman in her mid-20s had submitted her DNA for ancestry research. She was curious about her heritage. She had no idea she'd just opened the door to her forgotten past. Nivikoff worked fast. She traced the woman's online profiles, found photos, requested background documentation. Then she sent it all to Carlos, and Carlos broke down in tears. There was no question. That's her, he whispered. That's my daughter. But DNA doesn't care about belief. It only tells the truth. Othram ran the comparison again. 99.9999% match. There it was. The code, the irrefutable bond. Andrea Michelle Reyes had been found. But it wasn't over. Andrea had to be told. She was living her life, working, dating, paying bills, completely unaware that the ground beneath her identity was about to collapse. Detectives arranged contact through careful, quiet outreach. They explained everything. The case, the DNA, the father she never knew existed. And Andrea didn't believe it. My whole life is a lie, she asked. How is that even possible? They showed her the documents, the photos, the court order from 1999, the missing posters with her baby face, the birthday flyer her father had printed every year. Andrea sat in silence. Then she whispered, I remember none of this. She agreed to a second DNA test, this time supervised. The results came back, confirmed. Again, she was Andrea Michelle Reyes, the child who vanished 25 years ago. But DNA can only solve one part of the mystery. The rest, the emotional wreckage, the betrayal, the reuniting of strangers with shared blood, that would take more time. What happens when you find out you've lived your whole life as someone else? When the woman who raised you is the same woman who stole you? When your father, the one who never stopped searching, is a total stranger? That's what Andrea Michelle Reyes now faced. A 27-year-old woman with a 2-year-old stolen name and a lifetime of lies unraveling overnight. She was overwhelmed, angry, confused, devastated. She looked in the mirror and asked, who am I really? In Puebla, her world began to crumble. She questioned everything, her past, her future, the woman she had trusted her entire life. I love her, but how do you forgive someone who kidnapped you? Andrea's emotions turned stormy. Some days she grieved the life she never got. Other days, she felt guilt for the only mother she knew. And always, beneath it all, a quiet ache for the man who'd been left behind. That man, Carlos Reyes Covertier, had waited 25 years for this. He had rehearsed the moment in his head 1,000 times. What he'd say, what she'd look like, whether she would recognize him. She didn't, but he loved her anyway. They started small, a message, a voice call, a trembling hello over video chat. "It's good to see you," Carlos said. "You have your mother's eyes, but your smile is mine." Andrea cried. So did he. The wall between them began to crack. But this wasn't a movie. There were no background violins, no perfect happy ending. Their first conversation was full of stops and starts, of long pauses, of questions that had no answers. Why didn't she tell me about you? Why didn't anyone find me sooner? Why do I feel like I belong nowhere? Carlos didn't try to fix it. He just listened, and cried, and said, "You don't have to belong yet. Just know, I'm here." Weeks passed. Andrea and Carlos kept talking, learning, healing. And one day, Andrea said something new. "I want to meet you, in person." Carlos booked his flight to Mexico the next morning. When he arrived, he stood at the airport terminal, shaking. A man who had spent half his life printing missing posters, now watching his daughter walk toward him, alive. "She looked like a dream I'd tried to forget," he said. But there she was. Andrea hugged him, tight. No words, just 25 years, finally coming home. Some people think finding someone solves everything, that if a missing child is returned, the story is over. But for Andrea Michelle Reyes, being found was just the beginning. After meeting her biological father, after the hugs, the tears, the quiet hours of staring at old photographs she didn't recognize, Andrea faced a moment she knew would come. She had to confront her mother, not the woman who gave birth to her, the woman who took her, Rosa Tenorio, the same woman who'd kissed her forehead every night, who taught her to write her name, even if it was the wrong one, who whispered, "I love you," while hiding the biggest betrayal of her life. Andrea sat across from her, and the silence was deafening. "Why?" she asked. "Why did you take me?" Rosa cried. "I was scared," she said. "I thought they'd take you from me forever. I didn't trust the courts. I thought I was doing the right thing." Andrea didn't scream, she didn't run, but inside a war was raging. "You didn't give me a choice," Andrea said. "You made my life a lie." "But I loved you," Rosa replied. "You can love someone and still destroy them." Andrea whispered. There would be no arrests, no courtroom justice. The warrant for Rosa's crime was real, but only enforceable in the US. Andrea had no desire to see her mother in chains, not yet. She didn't want revenge. She wanted truth and space, so she made a choice. Andrea packed a bag, she bought a ticket, and she boarded a plane bound for Connecticut, the home she never knew, the place where she vanished, and where she'd begin, at last, to reclaim her identity. Carlos greeted her at the gate. No cameras, no press, just a dad, waiting for his daughter. He gave her a small key. "This is yours," he said. "It opens your room, the one we never changed." Inside were toys still sealed in boxes, books with her name scrawled inside, a photo album labeled, "Andrea, Years We Missed." She opened it, and for the first time, she saw her life, not as it was, but as it could have been. In time, Andrea would speak publicly. She'd work with missing children's organizations. She'd meet others like her, those stolen by the ones they trusted most. She'd become a voice for the voiceless, and slowly begin to forgive, not for Rosa, for herself, because home is not a place, not a country, not even a house. Home is truth. And now, Andrea Michelle Reyes finally had it. If this story moved you, if it opened your eyes to the silent tragedies that happen behind closed doors, please don't let it stop here. You like this video to support more powerful storytelling. Share it. You never know who might recognize a name or a face. Subscribe to our channel for more true stories of survival, justice, and hope. Your support brings these forgotten stories back into the light, and sometimes, it's that light that leads someone home.